Okay, so this job is a rough cut with the saw cuts in the lumber. It's Eastern White Pine. Client installed this with the full glue down install. And it is actually tongue and groove. And they want to maintain the saw mark cuts to them. So we have to be very specific on how we're going to sand it. A buffer wasn't going to be quite enough for this job. We want to try to remove, or at least alleviate or minimize a lot of the over-underwood. The client actually doesn't mind and actually prefers some of the over-underwood. This is going to be a ski-mobile camp. This is a brand new build. And so our planetary, the hyper grinder, would have been too powerful. It would have taken off or taken out too much of the saw curve marks that we're seeing in the flooring. So when it came down to decide on how to sand this job, we had a couple of options I guess we could have tried. One being a buffer with an abrasive on it, whether that be a laundry list of screens perhaps, or we could have done an abrasive on the buffer. We could have brought in the trio, which that was definitely an option, and perhaps started with like an 80 grit, and probably would have went up to 100 grit. Luckily for us, before we did this job, Hyper Grinder produced what they call the Hyper Orbit. And over there in Italy, where the machine is from, for some reason they're 17-inch over there, and we tend to use 16-inch abrasives here in the States for our buffers and things like that. So Hyper Grinder made a different form to create the base of the machine, and they made 3 16-inch versions and shipped them over here to the States, and we have one of those 3. We have the only version in the country that has an onboard vacuum, and we chose the onboard vacuum for, quite frankly, ease of use. It doesn't have its own containment system outside of a vacuum, so if we didn't have a vacuum, we'd have to be running a dust collection system to the unit, and we didn't want to do that. The guys and girls out there who are sanding floors, we all know, you're running your machines with a dust collection system on it, you're fighting a cord and you're fighting a hose. So we opted to go with the onboard vacuum and have it all inclusive in all one shot. And right now Chrissy is upstairs and she is going over the second floor, and this total square footage on this job is 1,000 square feet, or 1,100, I believe it's 1,100. And you can see how much of the saw curve cut is actually left. And this is going to be stained with early American stain, so that stain's really going to make them saw marks really jump out, and they're going to stain darker. But let's go up and take a look and see just how quick the Hyper Orbit moves on this type of floor. On this one down here, I did not time it. But it was a little bit over an hour to get this done, and it's only done with an 80 grit, and it's ready for the stain. And this is about an hour worth of work, and that's including stopping the machine, going out and getting new paper, putting different paper on. We are using black silicone carbide paper, which is a softer cut, and it's double-sided. I don't have any down here, but I can show you. I can go use an old piece. So here's the double-sided paper. This particular product is made from Norton. The Bona also makes the version of it, and that's what we use. And some of you might be thinking it's 80 grit, should be going higher. And like we tell people, it's not only the abrasive that counts, it's how the abrasive is being moved. And I'm going to bring you upstairs real quick where Chrissy is, and I'm going to show you how quick she's moving with that machine, and I'm going to show you how the machine itself actually moves the abrasive. That is a great machine for this job. Normally we use the Hyper Orbit after we use the Hyper Grinder. Anybody who knows about planetaries, the planetary machines are going to give you a tabletop-like finish. The Hyper Orbit is going to give you more like a piano top finish. So it's the next step above the quality of the sand job that a planetary will do. And we all know what the planetaries do in the professional field. They're amazing machines, and they leave an absolutely incredible surface in order for the coatings to be applied onto and ultimately give you just a beautiful floor overall. And the Hyper Orbit just brings everything to the next level. So it's quite a fascinating machine, and it does actually get right against the base. In this case, there is no base, obviously. There will be base put down, but you can see there's no discoloration marks between the very edge of the flooring and more out towards the field, where the edges normally wouldn't be able to get sanded with most planetaries really close to the wall. Hyper Grinder gets really close to the wall, and the Hyper Orbit gets right against it. So we're going to have minimal edge work to do with the Rotex. We'll have to do the corners in some places where the Hyper Orbit just may not reach, like where that chalk mark is. places like that. But the Hyper Orbit is definitely a fantastic machine. And for those who don't understand it, it's almost, the only way that I can explain it is it's a gigantic random orbital sander at the end of the stick. So the motion of the abrasive being moved, you can literally get away with an 80 grit, which is what we're doing in this case. Silicone carbide paper, which is what we chose to use, the softer mineral leaves, less abrasive scratch. And what our experience is that on that particular machine with even an 80 grit, the quality of that sand job afterwards is in the ballpark of either a 150 grit or a 180 grit by any other means of sanding. So it's just the way that the machine moves the abrasive that gives that effect of being sanded to a much higher grit. So with that being said, you're actually able to save some steps through the sanding process, which time is money. So if you're saving steps, not only are we saving sanding steps, we're also saving on abrasives, and we're also saving on vacuuming steps in between each sanding process that we do. So that's a great machine. Overall, this 1,100 square foot job with the Hyper Orbit is going to take us roughly 2 hours to 2 hours and 15 minutes to completely get this sanded with that machine and prep the sand. And we're probably going to have another 2 hours or so to do any corner work, edge work, which also includes the stair treads. So when you tally that all up, 1,100 square foot job for what this client wants, which by far is not your traditional sand and refinish job. They're just literally coming in and scuffing it up, cleaning it up, getting all the dirt off, getting the fuzzies off from the factory, getting most of the over-underwood down. They're definitely minimized, which like I said earlier in the video, the client actually doesn't mind and actually rather prefers over-underwood. And we were able to do that with that machine without compromising the integrity of the look of the floor from the rough cut, from the saw curve blade marks throughout the flooring. So it's a very versatile machine. Normally we use it as the final cut after the hyper grinder, and it can be used for intercoat abrasion. We have not done that yet. This is only our second job with that machine, third job. And you can also apply stain with it, which we also have not done with that machine yet. Let's take a look and see how that base of that Hyper Orbit moves and how it moves the abrasive. And here is the motion of the Hyper Orbit. Not only does it spin around, but it also randomly does its business. So with all that going on, like I said, at the same time, I just can't do it at the same time, spinning it around and making it move in a random motion. And that's why you can achieve an amazing cut with just an 80 grit. And the machine is actually, with the vacuum on it, is so quiet. You can have a conversation with somebody that's right beside you, speaking normally at a normal volume, and you can hear everything that's being said. So it is a fantastic addition to our arsenal of machines. And again, on this job, it's a very versatile machine. So not only is it a finishing sander, it also can apply stain and do intercoat abrasion, but it actually did what we needed it to do on this job, which was to clean this up. And I consider this, we're sanding it without actually sanding it, and we're still actually maintaining the integrity of the look of this saw cut floor, which is what the client wants. So there you go, the Hyper Orbit. It's our third job in, 32 years in business. This is our third job in with this machine. And again, the technology that's coming up almost on a constant basis with the machinery, with the abrasives, with the chemicals that are being used. You know, obviously wish this stuff was around 20, 30 years ago. It's just a fantastic machine that just creates amazing results. Less work, less processes, and less products are actually being used. And one thing I can definitely note is that when you sand the floor up to that degree where, like I said, an 80 grit to us looks like roughly between a 150 and a 180 grit sand, that we have discovered that the stain and the finish actually goes further. On the first few jobs we did with that machine, one was a stain job, one was a clear coat, and full sand and refinish, unlike this one here, but it was a full sand and refinish on both accounts. And we bring in the Hyper Orbit to finalize the sanding on both of those two jobs, and then apply the stain. And we apply the stain with the buffer. And on the first job that we did, that was a stain job. We applied it with the buffer, and the stain just went a lot further. We water popped the floor. It was a maple floor, and the stain went a lot further. And when it came down to doing the clear coat on that job and the following job, which the following job in itself was completely clear coat, we had noticed that the finish definitely traveled a lot further, because you are sanding it in a different motion, and you are giving it overall a higher quality sand. So you're actually able to sand the job, like I said, and get it to look and feel like it's a 150 to a 180 grit cut. You're tightening up the pores of the wood that much more, and that's why we're getting the stain and the urethanes to travel further. But we're not closing them up so much with that machine that we're burnishing the flooring, and we're not polishing the flooring. That way the flooring itself still has some hook for the chemicals to grab onto. So there you go, that's just a beautiful machine.